So what is up, guys? You got your boy Jet Stingren here today, and today we are back today with the tier list update. I know you guys have been kind of waiting for this one. I did put up a poll on my community tab asking if I should update the tier list, if I should do it every single month or if I should do it every single few months, like I was thinking about doing it originally. And the big reason why I decided to ask this question is because I don't necessarily mind updating a tier list if you guys really do appreciate the content, but I see the demand as to why people want it every single month, because some people want to know from, you know, a creator standpoint, where they think a unit may rank. You know what I mean? I think that that's perfectly fine, perfectly fair. You guys did vote in favor of the tier list being every single month, so when the next tier list update will come, we'll probably be at the start of patch 1.9, and then I'll talk about the new units there, do some many changes if I feel any need to do so. But let's go ahead and get right into it. Let's go and talk about our disclaimers where we talk about our tier list. So first things first, this is a personalized tier list based on what I may feel that is perfectly good in the game right now. I do not by any means want this to be an official tier list, a tier list you must follow. I can say insert unit here is S tier super broken, but that does not necessarily mean that you have to pull by virtue of what I have to say. It's always good to get other opinions if you're unsure yourself. Watch maybe more informed videos from other creators and other things like that to, of course, reaffirm your decision. But if you don't want to pull a unit because if you don't have fun with that unit, then that is perfectly fine. Another thing I want to say is please be respectful of other people's comments in the comment section, please. I've seen this from time to time in other things I've done or other videos that I've seen from other creators where comment sections can get pretty toxic and based on these type of videos, because a lot of people feel like, insert unit here is super broken, but then they're like, no dude, that unit sucks, what are you talking about, stop coping, you know what I mean? But let them enjoy the unit the way that they want to enjoy the unit. I feel like Reverse 1999 is definitely a game where you can create content with fun teams without necessarily having to follow to the meta. Well, yes, that's debatable for some of the later end content, because you can't be using like freaking baloney and freaking like Owl Cryptid, you know what I mean? Like, she's not gonna work there. But I mean, if that's something you want to say for your own personal enjoyment, by all means, that's perfectly something that's in your right. So anyway, let's get right into it and let's talk about it. So we're gonna talk about what we had in our original 1.7 tier list, and then we're gonna go ahead and update those placements. We're not going to change every single unit. Some units just stays where they are, but we're gonna talk about some of the reasons why I want to move a unit either up or down. So there's that. Alright, so let's talk about our S plus tier units. We have 2 Fairy, we have Junianza, we have 6, we have 37, and we have Isode. Yeah, really good units there. But we'll talk about why we're upgrading. We have in S tier, we have Marcus, Sonato, we have Necro, we have Yensei, we have Anali, we have Manalia. Yeah, we have Manalia. I can't say her name right. I'm still getting on the process of saying her name. Please forgive me. But Manalia is here. Anali, Kalambana, Spahothia, and GTN. Or GTN. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right. I don't think I'm saying his name right. But I'm not going to argue over it. But Manalia is definitely going to be one I'm going to be getting used to, because I'm so used to saying Manalia instead. But anyway, Balloon Party, Beacorn, Charlie, Medicine Pocket, a Knight, and Pickles is going to be in the A tier, and of course we have the lower tier options B and C. And yeah, let's talk about it. So we're going to talk about our first thing first is going to be what units are we going to be dropping down. Now, before I get into the drop down, please don't let this be a factor to say that the unit is bad or outclassed. No, that's not true. Either I rank them initially too high, or they're starting to wane down in use. It's either just one of the two, and I'll explain why. So first things first is I'm going to drop 6 down to the top of S tier. The reason why I'm dropping 6 down is he is definitely in the factor of waning down in use. Back then, when he first debuted like 1.4 and 1.5 and mostly 1.6, he was the perfect 4th man slot. You couldn't really go anywhere without using a 6 in your team, because, well, I mean, you could, but I mean, if you had 6, you would always want to use him in your 4th man slot because of, the utility he still brings. He still brings great utility. For example, he's still a great partner for Marcus, for example, because of his ability to empower incantation and all that good stuff, and incantation might bonus too, which Marcus actually does like. So, like, there was great reasons to still use 6 in the game, but the big reason why he's dropping down now is because newer supports like Isolde, we have more personalized supports coming that prefer the team slot option as opposed to just a more universal kind of everywhere buffer like how 6 is. 6 is a little bit of everything. He does provide a little bit of damaging buffs with the incantation might up, the penetration rate, and then he provides some sustain with the mental reality defense and stuff like that, and the regen. But other than that, I mean, like, you know, some people just prefer like specific team. For example, Isolde is a perfect example of a hyper focused carry support because she gives the critical defense down, she gives up to 75% damage bonus, and she has a reality shred. So that's a big reason why a lot of people are taking the Isolde factor, because he's more so focused for damaging buffs, while 6 is kind of an everywhere unit. He can do a little bit of everything for his buffs. Of course, his debuffs are still good, but you don't necessarily need, you know, mental shred plus minus 15% if you don't have any mental units. I mean, he himself is mental, so I guess that does count, but still, you know what I mean? That's kind of just the whole kind of aspect that I'm thinking about when it comes to 6. Honestly, I think it's just more so he's just kind of weighing down because we're getting personalized supports that really help elevate our carries to the next level. And I will say this, 6 is still by every stretch of the word a great unit, so do not take this as, you know, S being, you know, S plus being the definitive focus pool. S is still very, very worth. Like, think of S as like a tier 0.5, like, for real. He's a tier 0.5 character in my book. Okay, all right, next up is going to be 37. I'm gonna have to drop 37 down to A tier. I know this is a little bit painful to put 37 down in A tier, but hear me out, okay? 37's damage is really low. I mean, at first I used to not really mind 37's low damaging numbers, because the whole point of what I would use her for was for the follow-up meta, right? You have characters like Ju, you have Lilia, you have other characters out there that could provide good reasons for her to trigger follow-up. But even with all the amplifiers you could give her for Genesis damage, like the card like Silent and Adoring and stuff like that, her own personal damage isn't that good. It's not. It's really not that good. Of course, you have Silent and Adoring, and her buff comes from Ultimate that buffs up Genesis damage too. But other than that, you know, you're not really hitting hard. You're only hitting hard on like 2 casts of attacks, and that's not really good enough. Of course, she does do great in things like Gorgon Rage. He's pretty much specifically made for Gorgon Rage because it has a boost of Genesis damage, which she just loves to have. But other than that, I mean, I still do think 37 is a really good unit for like those bosses that have high defense, since Genesis completely ignores defense altogether. So that's still really good for 37. But other than that, I just think that she's one of those units that really needs portraits to come online. Yes, you can use her at P0, but she's just not going to be as strong. P2 is where she kind of becomes like her own little main carry, and then a feasible sub carry in today's content. You know what I mean? Like, Isolde is a prime example of a good sub carry because she can at least still put up like 20-30k off of intermezzo follow-ups if you know, time it just correctly and stuff like that. But you know, you're not gonna get that with 37 at P0, even with the right amplified. So I mean, yeah, it's just a little bit unfortunate. But if you have her at portraits like P2 and above, I would say she's definitely up here. But for right now, I think just P0, which is where I traditionally like to keep my 6 stars, I think she's just kind of go down to the A tier. All right, so next is going to be Jessica. I'm gonna bump Jessica down to the A tier as well. I'm bumping Jessica down because Marcus is now here, and Marcus is gonna be taking Jessica's spot in terms of plant teams. I know you're probably wondering, but why? Well, one, the new unit that's coming out in patch 1.8 is definitely going to make Marcus substantially better. She already had a good support in 6. Now she just has a secondary good support in Velo, so that's going to be a good thing. Marcus also gets better like over the course of time with newer units, which makes her the more preferred option. I mean, for what it's worth, Jessica lasted a long time in S tier, for sure, because she was realistically the only real plant carry. That was the thing. She was the only one. I mean, yeah, there's some lower tier ones, like Eagle, for example, was definitely considered as a plant carry. But in terms of 6-star plant carries, she was the only one. And for what it's worth right now, Jessica has kind of peaked in terms of what she can get to make her better, honestly, because She got Isolde, which was like kind of like the next big break from her, because Isolde allows Jessica to have 100% uptime on Blasphemer of Night, which is the preferred cube of choice that she likes to have. So there wasn't really no more upgrading after that fact. You know, once Isolde came and gave Jessica the boost, by all means, she's now at her peak power now, outside of, you know, portrays or something. But yeah, that's really just it. She just kind of hit her peak, and there's not really too much more for her to go to. So there's that. Next up is going to be Kalambana. I'm going to be dropping her down to A tier as well. I think Kala is still fine. It's just that she's just not as strong as she used to be. Not namely because of Ju. I know a lot of people are like, you know, Ju exists, you know, Kala is terrible now. Not necessarily. I still do find reasons to use Kala over Ju in certain content, depending. But most times, yeah, it's going to be Ju that you use over Kala. That's definitely a factor because of just how much damage Ju puts up on her own. But Kala still had at least some fun utility options with, you know, the whole Saturn, the moon thing, the planet thing was actually a pretty fun concept. But other than that, it's just her damage isn't peaking as much as it used to be. I still do think Kala's like fantastic for Marsh, like the Marsh raid, because mental, and you don't get stopped by that big dummy reality mitigation that it has. Of course, you're not able to dispel. But yeah, I mean, I still do think that she's still good for Marsh, for example, similarly to how Jessica's good for Cryptid. So they still have placements in the higher end end game content. So they're still definitely worth pulling if you want to actually invest into them. Like if you do get a Kalambana off batter, don't despair. It's still a good pull. So I mean, yeah, it's just like her damage is falling off personally, and that's just what I think. So let me see. Any of the S tiers I want to remove besides them? No, not really. All right, let's take a look at the A tiers. Any A tiers I want to move down? Maybe I can move Balloon Party down now. I think I can move Balloon Party down. The big reason why is because we now have access to a third healer, and Balloon Party was kind of known as the third best option in terms of being a healer. Now we have another healer that exists, which arguably makes Balloon Party's placement even more harder to justify. I mean, I still do think she's still a good healer, because she's definitely going to be good for like the content that hits you really hard, because Balloon Party heals more based on HP loss. So the more HP you lose, the more you get healed for, which is actually still solid. I think that's still a solid gain for you know, healer content out there. But when you look at the current content out there, I am going to just say that Balloon Party isn't really taking up too many placements, at least in what I've seen, and of course from what I've experienced. I don't think Balloon Party is really doing anything these days. So yeah, and then with that new healer that's going to come out, which we already talked about in the Should You Pull video, Vila, it's going to be even harder, because you have Vila, you have Two Fairy, and you have Yensei. Those three are still the goated three. Like, you can't really beat those three. So I think that's why Balloon Party is going to dip down a little bit. All right, do I'm going to bump anybody down in the B tier? I'm going to say I'm going to bump Baby Blue down to C. I mean, no one's really using Baby Blue. Again, I say the same thing about every time I talk about Baby Blue, is her buffs are just complicated to really work with. I think that her buffs are just kind of like, really? So you have to focus on one or the other, which is a little bit annoying. You can use them both tandemly, that's a fact, but it just eats up so much of your AP, which is just not sustainable at all in content. So I don't think it's definitely worth to really invest in something like that. So yeah, I just think it's just more so niche. We do have other ways of mental shred with Six, Shemaine, you know, those are still at least decent mental shredders. So yeah. All right, anyone else I want to bump down before I get started with the newer units? Let's see. Voyager, I'm actually bumping Voyager up to B. I had her in C, but I'm bumping her up to B. She was already here. I didn't move her down. I apologize. But Voyager's decent. I do think that Voyager has placements as a good overall defensive support. I'm going to actually put her in B. But yeah, there's some good placements for her out there. Let me see. Anybody who I want to move in C? I'm actually going to move Urza up to A. You know what? I actually did undervalue Urza, honestly. I feel like I did, because Urza being a good crit buffer with the way that we build our units now for crit damage, is still a pretty sizable option, and he still is one of the best units you can take in raid for score boosting, because of course him being able to put up a crit damage buff, which is really good way to help kind of mitigate a lot of that damage that you take when it comes to doing content. So that's the thing I really do appreciate about that's the thing I really do appreciate when it comes to this type of content, because Urza's really good for that type of content. He's also really good in Limbo too. I think Limbo is a really good place for him to really kind of express his overall abilities as a useful unit. I think Raid is his home. I think that's really just the content you want to use Urza the most in his Raid. I think technically Limbo too, because he does work in certain Limbo stages, but yeah, I've definitely seen a lot of usefulness with Urza in terms of raid in the past few times that I've run various teams across it. I do, outside of the video clears I do on YouTube, I do run some fun teams to see if I can like maybe reach a little bit higher or reach at a certain point with those teams. Maybe I might upload those one day. You guys don't really watch the raid videos, but I mean, maybe I might, just for the sake of just having it on file. But anyway, there's that. Juvis, I'm going to move Juvis up to A as well. Juvis is good. Juvis is good for, you know, the sustain of plant teams, and she did fantastic in Owl Cryptid. I've seen so many clips with Juvis and Owl Cryptid because of her good control. So I do think that she does hold some usefulness just for that alone, because raid is honestly one of the most important forms of content for me, honestly. But Juvis is still an overall good unit, even if you can't really petrify. That was like my big thing about putting her in C initially, was because if you can't petrify something, then it's kind of GG's. But at least she does have teams working for her now, because you can technically put her in a team with Marcus as a sub DPS option, and that gives Marcus a form of self-sustain with the damage heal because of her little unique buff that's on I3. So I think that, you know, she at least has some form of usability now when it comes to being a, you know, overall slot pick in certain teams. It really just depends on what you would be comfortable with, but I do think she still at least holds content over, you know, as a usable sub DPS in teams. So yeah, I do think that she actually does deserve actually being A instead of C tier. So there's that. Anybody else I want to upgrade or demote before I do it? One final look at the list of what I feel is okay, and I think I'm okay with everything here. So let's talk about the first new unit. That's going to be Vila. Vila's going to go immediately to the S+ tier. No questions about it, no debates, no type of, you know, maybe. No, Vila's fantastic, okay? She's giving this unit right here a run for her money, okay? And it's, I mean, they're both really good. They both have various reasons to be used. But I do think that, ultimately speaking, that Vila is going to be on so many teams because of the crit support. And again, a lot of our DPS is built towards crit. I mean, it's such a fun thing to do when your units crit for such a high amount of damage, and she's going to be the one unit that's going to be able to boost up crit rate and crit damage. Being a on-demand crit buffer is just mwah, chef's kiss. You know what I mean? Chef's freaking kiss, dude. Such a good unit. And then of course she has great healing, and she does provide some sustain with sturdiness onto the heal target so they don't get obliterated again, which is again very, very good. So I can't really say too much negative about Vila. I can't really say anything negative about Vila. She deserves being an S+ tier. So there's that. Next up is August. August I'm gonna put in good as well. Again, I like the fact that August is kind of like a weird baby version of 6, being able to both, I mean, no, I shouldn't say that. I think August is just a really good dual support that has the ability to kind of function in multiple ways being used. You know, he has either the form of being a more sustained support when he's in the front of the team, or a more damaging support when he's in the back, or you can kind of put him in like in the second or third slot to kind of give like a mix. For example, if you're running like Marcus, Isolde, Vila, and August, right? Let's just say that was a team you're running, right? You can technically put August in the third slot because the damaging buffs that he will provide, like the rousing morale and all that stuff, doesn't really work for Vila. So at least you can provide her with the sustained buffs from his skills to allow her to be a little bit more healthy, allow her to take a little less damage and stuff like that. That also runs true for someone like Tooth Fairy, who doesn't necessarily care about the rousing morale, really. I mean, it's nice extra damage for her because she does have a damaging ult, but still, you know what I mean? It's not like she directly needs the buff. So I do like the fact that August does have, you know, that built-in utility of being a dual support to allow him to have more reasons to be used. So I do think that he actually is going to be a pretty good support going into the game, and especially if you're a new player. If you're a new player, I definitely recommend you pull August for sure. So there's that. Winsong. Oh god, oh god, you guys are not ready for Winsong. you guys think that Junions is disgusting? Oh god, wait till you see Winsong, dude. If you haven't watched any videos on CN, I'm letting you know right now. Oh, she's tough. She's tough. So Winsong's whole entire gimmick is stacking up this one card that deals pretty decent damage at that, and it has built-in crit rate conversion, which is Lilia would never, okay? Okay, jokes aside. But the one thing about this is you want to build up as much of this card because she has a skill that can self-generate the card, and she can rank up into it really easily. And then when she casts her ultimate, she converts all of her cards into that one skill, and then she just fires them off, rapid succession. And the crazy thing about this is Winsong does not have any limit to how many times she can cast this skill. There's no limit. If you stack up 5, she's going to cast all 5. You stack up 10, she's going to cast up all 10. And that single turn, which is absolutely insane, okay? It is bananas, the type of stuff that you can pull off with Winsong. Literally any single target content that, you know, isn't, you know, star resisted, if you know, care about the whole thing about that, she's going to nuke really hard. Like raids, I've seen people put up raid videos on CN where they go from some low rank like B rank on like turn 27 from B to like red S. Like, come on, like in one turn you go from B to S in one turn. Remember how I said in raids where it's like, you want to get that good damage so you can make the time to get the good score, you know what I mean? Like stuff like that. Winsong makes that whole gimmick a joke. Like, she makes that whole gimmick a joke. You can just pretty much sit and chill, build yourself up, and then just get more damage, stack up those cards, and then she has things like Vilas. It's going to be a great buffer for her too. She has all these wonderful utilities and tools that is going to make her pop the freak off, dude. She's going to be such a strong star carrier. She's arguably considered one of the strongest damaging units in the entire game. Spahothea? No. She's gone. She's cooked, okay? She's cooked, okay? She cooked herself, anyway. Because, you know, fire. But anyway, like we talk about good, strong, single-target damage dealers. Spahothea, obviously, one of the better ones. Winsong blows her completely out of the water. Like, Winsong is on the level. I know this feels like me glazing Winsong, but I don't care. This is how I feel. Winsong is on the caliber of a limited unit like Junionza without being a limited unit. Like, it's absolutely insane how cracked of a unit she is. So no questions asked, she's going S+ tier, and I don't think she'll ever leave this tier unless they make some other ridiculously busted character like her. So, but anyway, that is going to be the tier list for you guys here today. This is the full this should be the final version that I think until 1.9 comes out we talk about the new units there. And yeah, without further ado, hope you guys enjoy it, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.